Good evening, we've got everyone here that's gonna be here, and they're a little bit behind, so it's called the meeting. In the whole, so the Tuesday, August 12th, we call the rolls now. Here.
Alderman Swindle. Here. Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Cantor.
Here.
Alderman Scott.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Pratt is absent. Alderman Gephardt.
Here. Here. And we're doing a film, it's a different audio visual, and if I just pass the mic around, people can hear.
Yeah.
Some of our normal media equipment, think about the water place. Oh, some issues stuff, so we'll push on here. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes of June 10th. Second. We should have a second. Are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? There is none. We say aye. Approve the minutes. Any opposed? It's carried. Next, we have two discussion items. The first is a zoning and land use concept review for Washington Road. Commercial report. That will take a wait. So we'll brief.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're going to start with just a little background about this has been going on for a couple of years now. We started this process back in July of 23 with the Economic Development Board. And then when the Common Council committee pulled back on forward. And then as time we decided to pause a little bit until the market analysis was completed, so better recommendations came out there. Once we got the recommendations out back in market analysis, Economic Development Board met in February, March, and planning commission met in April, and now we're here at council. So what we ended up doing is, and I just put this in the short context, I don't need to understand all the details of this map. It just shows the cornucopia of colors that we have along Washington Road. The reason we were doing this is our commercial board recognized distinction. It's just a variety of different zoning districts, you see all different colors. We also have non-standard language in our code. We have some are fitness centers, some health clubs, and indoor recreation facilities. So we want to clean up some of that. And the other thing is we rely a lot on the utility to deny initial use, which is a lot more difficult because under state law. So we're tasked to create a new zoning ordinance, and then the consensus of goals that were from the market analysis, this is from the economic development and planning commission. These are the goals that go with the first three are specific to increasing the intensity of use along Washington Road on the east. The east side is different than the west side, and the west is the freeway. So they're open to a little bit more intensity in terms of use size. So they determined that it will allow larger square footage on the east side of Moore Road, allow 3 stories but right on the east side of Moore Road, and allow for reduced open space of 30% on the east side of Moore Road. Our open space requirement for the rest of the district 40%. And then we are also tasked with the consolidating zoning district as much as possible based on existing land uses, but prevent the creation of numerous non-conforming uses, which is possible. It's kind of a double-edged sword, tough thing to do. Also create a shopping center district for some pavilions, and we also do Dave's hardware site that one as well. And limit fast food and all related facilities on the border via lower district. And then add residential options for certain identified locations along the corridor, provide common language, permitted and conditional uses, then provide opportunities to identify sites identified for market analysis. So this is kind of what we came up with for proposed zoning district. So the issue of larger sites along Port Washington Road, we got in a couple different ways. Number one, we added, instead of the old B4 zoning district, we added a zoning district called large scale zoning. So all the light blue would be large scale zoning. You can see most of that is on the east side of Port Washington Road, except for this piece right here, which is Children's Hospital, which is already existing facility. The rest of the sites, we increased the square footage we allow and the type required in the actual code sections of B3 and B2. There were certain ones we did not want to rezone at this time, like the this purple one in this location here. That's the funeral home. We didn't feel the funeral home was permitted a good use for B4, but we felt that we would leave it at B3 and allow funerals at B3, and then eventually the use goes away, we would rezone that to something else. So we were always trying to balance the issue of existing non-conformities where maybe we don't want to see those uses. We have the storage unit, the storage building, we have some gas stations. May not be in the best location, but we try to get a limited number of non-conformities, but also kind of not wanting to water down too much where we water. So So this is kind of what we came up with. So we have the new SC zoning district, which is in yellow. You have the new overlay district, which is tougher to see. I did put a printout on your table of all the map of the proposed zoning. Overlay has a stripe labeling on it, so that's for like basically gas stations, car washes, and fast food restaurants. And we expanded that to include most of the existing ones. Like some of them are kind of out of the way, but we felt that we didn't want to make them non-conforming, like the Shell station, which is kind of located in this area here. That one was kind of like an existing entity that's been there a long time. We didn't want to make them non-conforming, so we left overlay on that as well. In case that ever did redevelop, we would change it to blue, and that's why we decided to do overlay to keep them forbidden as use. Again, we expanded large scale, and then on the west side of Port Washington Road, as you can see, we kept the purple, which is the office, and then the lighter red is retail. So kept it smaller, less intentional use on the west side of Port Washington Road. And then instead of changing anything to allow residential in the zoning districts, the idea was to have a land use plan. So the market analysis and the economic development plan should recognize locations where residential may be allowed in the future, depending on certain circumstances. So the option would be to change the land use plan to give a nod to this if certain conditions met, we may be able to residential. That gives developers at least some confidence that this is going to go to. Now, this is something you don't have to do. This is independent of the zoning changes. If you don't feel comfortable making these land use changes, how we can further that to a future time. This showed the market analysis sites, and basically all I'm showing here is that we accommodated for what the market analysis wanted for those sites. There's a couple of outlaws shown. One is in front of the Marcus Theater. One is in front of Ronnie's Mex Market. Now they proposed that we should allow fast food drive-through in those locations. We did not want to see a proliferation of fast food from drive-through. So we allowed them to have fast food, which we call limited service restaurants, but we did not allow them to have drive-through in those locations. Some of these sites along the south end of the development, you see that they're vacant. Those are some of the sites that she identified as potential sites for residential. So the reason we're here today is so our next step with this goes as well. The council would be to do public outreach, reach out to all the property owners, explain to them what's going on. And if there's a consensus that we're in the right direction, we would have to go through and create all the two zoning districts, each on the parcels, amend the land use plan, amend the and adopt the land use plan. It's a lot of effort, work, and just to make sure council is fully aware of where we're at with this subject or with this process and make sure to buy it before we get further. So, but I want to also show you is some of the, I'll blow up some of the charts. So this is the land use chart. This is one of the things where we try to consolidate all of our uses into NAICS categories. That's what this code is in the front line. So every one of our uses would fall under this specific code. Right now, again, our language is all over the place. And then we basically put it by B2, B3, B4, shopping center, retail overlay. The red ones are ones I identified after going out and doing about 100 windshield surveys, or ones that were not included that would have made people non-conforming. So I added those. So at the end of the day, after reviewing all this, I think I came up with the bottom of these are the ones that I still identified as non-conforming, which is a funeral service facility that's located in Port Washington Road. It's a wig shop, which I wasn't aware of. The Chalet Hotel and North Shore Retail. That's an auto search. Those would be the only 4 sites, at least that I found, that would be non-conforming as part of this. There may be others in there. We looked up everything from basic county line up to Mequon Road, north of Mequon Road, some of the gallery office buildings have hundreds of tenants, and it's really difficult to determine all those. You don't really keep track of tenant spaces that have turned over the years, so that's really difficult to kind of determine. So I was using basic sign data to evaluate the usefulness of their actual sites. So I guess the biggest issue, the biggest change, where the council may have some questions or concerns, is this idea of intensification of uses along the center portion. That's I think the biggest thing we can discuss, whether there's support for that or not. And then we can speak of all the other zoning changes that we're proposing. I did have a conversation with all the parish there, and they gave a lot of feedback and comments. And I think the biggest issue we struggle with, and I think we talked a little bit on the phone, is this issue of allowing either non-conformities to occur or to keep zoning true to So the land use is going to see. And it's difficult, like, you know, he brought up the issue of this funeral home, like, we want to perpetuate funeral homes in that area, but we don't, we also don't want to make them non-conforming, so that's kind of a balance we have to kind of play out a little bit, so yeah, we're here to just get some feedback from you guys on where you, if you think this is the right direction, if there's any critiques or comments about that, we're open to hear from it, and then you can always bring it back for another visit if you want, or we'll, if not, we can move it on and go to the public outreach and then run these back to planning commission for the ordinance procedure. So I'll open up for any questions.
Any questions? Alderman Parrish just volunteered to go last. I'm going to pass the microphone down to Alderman Strelchuk.
So, question for you, with regards to the apartments and residential, what is the also talking large apartment complexes, are we talking use?
So I think there was discussion, and we didn't get a lot of detail with it. I think there was discussion of multi-family and mixed-use buildings. But we did not feel comfortable putting these in commercial zoning district, and we did not want to emulate the town center zoning district down there.
Right.
So that was the thought, was okay, maybe we change the land use to allow for residential. So for example, one of the areas is town square area where I've heard from some of the people that own the condos there in the past that they're having difficulty renting out some of the spaces. So if you two or three of them got together and you sold, they could build some residential plexes or some more families or something like that. So we would have to come up with language in the land plan to kind of dictate what those terms are. And if we're okay with that, then when somebody comes forward with a proposal, then we would have to create the zoning district for it, or we would have to amend the zoning district to add that to. So I think you still have some control. We're not giving away everything, but allowing just multi-family or mixed use. Did it additional, we're not even going to put it in the zoning code, we're just allow it. I just plan just again give a nod to developers that the city is actually interested in and there's certain conditions with that. So those are the kind of feedback we want to hear. If you don't want to see any multi-story there, we can address that in the land use plan. And then say that we allow residential over 2-story, over greater than 2 stories, things like that. Those are the kind of comments we kind of need at this point.
I'm comfortable with 2 or even 3 as long as it is world in the neighborhood residents. Really shadow them, for lack of better words. And looking at very well, I don't think they moved into their homes or village, just moving the tenant and having something that large and intensive there. The additional question that I have is on the uses. We listed 3 ones are detailed place, which was also part of the car repair license for 3 years. The funeral home, had family members, friends, and former aldermen that have been buried there, or had memorial services there. I think that's kind of a service to the community. It allows us to mourn our family and someone that's close to home. So I'm going to question removing that in the future.
Well, we're not looking at Martell.
Okay.
Lane Goodman, I don't even know if it's system. They're talking about services, they're in a multi-tenant office building, but I'm not sure the level of care. They don't perform for those there.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was what it wasn't Martell, but that would be left as conforming with the B3 zoning if we change it there.
The wage house seems like you need.
Yeah, it's retail, there's a difference between service and retail, and I guess I can get more information from them. That's really part of the outreach. I don't know exactly what percentage of stuff is sales versus service.
Of the people who had a lady in their family, etc. So it's really needed something. It's nice. And they don't return to the store.
And the issue of for that, then we making it non-conforming would not be the end of the world for them. They could still operate as long as they want to. I don't think expanding in the site, even if they wanted to expand, under the big time to use provision in our code as well as expansion back. So just by labeling non-conforming doesn't really prohibit them from doing anything other than what they're doing now or even expanding in the future. I just want to make sure that other than address the detailing issue. The detailing one is a little tougher because the detailing is located kind of down in this area here, and there's really nothing else around it. It'd almost be like shell a little bit. I guess we could add that, but again, that was another one where if they wanted to expand, they'd have the right under expansion plan for it. So it's kind of like if we're falling out of body here at top center. And we're allowed to expand, they're allowed to include their property into that expansion. So it's just because we label non-conforming, it's not an end of the world situation for them. If it burns down or they can't build, that's probably the biggest issue, but for the most part, I think we're pretty flexible in our code when it comes to non-conforming uses.
I think storage of vehicles on the property is the biggest question. The last question is turned about financial institutions and banks are really great, they're really great services to have in the city. All of our prime retail areas are getting built with new banks and new things going in, and concern with the town center, when the town center is their commercial corridor on Port Washington Road is getting more. And I think we've got enough and or maybe too many of that type of services. Is there any way to limit future development when they have a limit where they can go to those types of things to stay within conforming?
We did talk about that, and there wasn't a lot of consensus to like limit the number of banks, because it's such a base, so we kind of regular.
I get it, it's just, they're good neighbors,
Yeah,
big numbers and everything else, but
and for square foot, they generate a lot of tax revenue. We did do is we put in their language about where the drive-through has to go, where it's small, so like if they went into like the shops, and they would do that, the drive-through, if it's on like for Washington, or the drive-through has to be back, so you kind of required it over the years, but this would be built in with the actual. I don't think the economic development board, the planning commission, or the park analysis suggested we should kind of prohibit banks and things. You can do that if you like, but it's something they felt was.
it's just one negative feedback we get from the community as to, when a new site comes out and it's excited to see what goes in, and it's another thing. I mean, I took my son to lunch today and he's like, oh, it's one in the old baseball. Next is a bank, and he goes, great. But we haven't, we can't do it. But it's part of its own and everything else. They're good community members. And I laid it all out to him like a good dad, like it's all. Keep innocence of a, a teenager not knowing the background on it, kind of does mirror some of what the residents have said in the past. So just, a point of discussion. Okay.
The other thing we could do, we did with like office uses, we still allow office uses in our B2 commercial. They didn't want to see office in the B2, they wanted to see commercial uses in there, so we could prohibit banks in the B2 and then allow in the office zoning districts, and then wouldn't be taking more commercial space, but that may cause some issues with like existing non-conformities for some of the banks that just recently in the space.
Something. Maybe not just,
And I think, maybe we talked about banks, we talked more about what banks might prefer to do someday. Some of this is maybe make it more attractive to determine where to site someday. It's not, what's going to go on one bank. We kind of tend to be stacked a little bit different than it's starting to the next time. But you can make it more attractive to turn it over someday. Whenever the great exodus in banks happens for the Britain orders. 5, 10, 20 years from now, everybody's easier. I'm doing some things now. All of my.
Or talking about things that should be on things before that. My question is, which businesses do you anticipate getting some pushback from? They, for example, all the blue area at large scale, it's like each fitness and movie theater, is that considered large scale?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think from the people on the east side of the Washington Road, I think they'll be happy because they're actually getting large ability to develop larger buildings and bigger sites on their property. So I don't think they'll see as much blowback. I don't think you'll see much blowback. Most of the existing businesses, maybe other than a couple of non-conformities, because they can actually expand a lot of opportunities for them. And then on the west side of the road, I don't think it really changes too much from whether if they have existing. There's some discussions we had about some other use that all the parishes is going to have comments regarding some of these non-conformities, whether you're continue that or not. And we had a good comment about should we allow some of the stuff in the park or some of the quasi industrial uses, should we allow them? So I think that's a discussion. I don't really see anybody totally objecting to any of this, because I think it actually is important for our property. Now, again, I will preface this out into Dr. Attorney Day. If we remove certain use categories, it may require a 6-vote pass because we are technically now zoning property, but we're giving them more opportunities in terms of square footage. We're taking away any kind of individual use category from the zoning district. It's balanced with the state law where it's 6 votes on. So,
Any other feedback on the camera? Before you, make me aware of someone, by right? Yeah. Open mic.
Previous to, I think earlier, 20,000.
but down to 3 feet each, but before it was not important.
Fine.
I think the market analysis for her analysis, she felt that there was a missed opportunity of value. So she felt that increasing the size of the buildings and allowing for bigger buildings and less green space will increase the ability and the value of the properties. Yeah, that's a philosophical. I know that's kind of what we've stood for years. Now we relied on this notion of the PUD to kind of allow for larger buildings that we have, like for example, Figure, you said that's 8,000 square feet. Children's Hospital, I think, is around 40 or 50. And then the medical market's like 60, so we have some of those. So there are some marketplaces that need fits. I don't know if it's definitely does. So we try to at least continue that pattern of having larger buildings only on the side, but on the west side, you're right, we'd still get to 20,000 square. So
Been increasing the,
it's very few because we didn't allow them unless they had a diesel freighters stories inside. It's probably the biggest example. No, that's large, but we're looking at 80,000 square feet, 40. There aren't a lot of 3 stories. I don't really anticipate a lot of 3-story development just because then when you get to that 3rd story, that elevator, it's a lot more important. It's sometimes not worth it. Standpoint. She felt that in analysis that the business market would be responsive to having that 3rd floor option.
well, we've had analysis of that. Saying that we should be able to do some. I'm not think it's a place to.
I very, very simple, but actually it's such a story. It could apply to anything. If somebody wanted to build like a smaller office building, 3 stories, it could be a hotel. Most hotels have 3 stories. But it could apply to any kind of use that was a little on the border. So it wasn't really specific to any specific type of usage. She felt allowing 3 stories allow for ability to generate more revenue.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like experience.
yeah, and that's why we hired a market analysis from somebody else that gives a unbiased look at it, and we get to decide what we decide. City perspective. Oh no, I didn't know.
Any other comments? Open slot.
I would go a similar sentiment, I don't know, about 3 stories. I mean, overall, I think that third, some issues, so I don't know. But then, going up 3 stories, we historically have not. Makes it harder to place those things. All like feel and desirability, so I felt that the market study brought lots of good points. I don't think that was the direction that council necessarily needs to head. So while she gave us other thoughts to ponder, which is excellent, I don't think we should kind of change this way that we traditionally done things. I think our residents have backed us up on that over again. I'm still waiting for the community survey, but even every time we do a community survey, we get similar feedback from the viewers. So I have a little bit hesitancy about it also increasing this percentage of buildings. And also businesses perhaps that might once not looking at understand, and most residents have a page revenue out of the city or expecting types of services.
I'd add that the kind of undesirable uses you're talking about aren't going to go into the 30 houses. But they're also regulated by other provisions called private plan.
Well, even 40, and you're talking, so bigger box or 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's not really what we're talking about. That's the rationale for proposing expansion of the footprint and the height on the east side of the road was simply a nod to the fact that it's only it's the freeway and you're never going to upset the neighbors there. It's the freeway. It contains it on the east side of Port Washington Road, but drawing the line at the Port Washington Road, that pushing it further to the west. To acknowledge that we don't want it going any else there, even if we were to accept it, which is well, that's why the line was drawn. We tend to get the question over this there anyway because of the parents at school. I can't.
With higher density and Port Washington, additional business as well.
I don't think there's a role, there's not a that representation like Port Washington. It's far less busy than my problem. It'll be much better once the construction is out of the way. Well, I think Jack alluded to it, the hotel may has performed, I don't see them doing one or two.
Correct, I think we're gonna probably do this 4 stories, and that would kick it. So I don't see the 3 story. I think if they're gonna ask for, just do it for their best, be a gas station, so we're supposed for hotel, they wanted 4 stories. Just that they don't want 3, so. The benefit of that is if they want 4 stories and the use would be allowable, that would kick them into PUD, so we can have more control of what's happening back. We'll learn more, I think, with the hotel analysis going up soon, so I don't think it's small back at hotel. I think we'll be able to track there. That's possible, I mean, I just,
Depending on the size of the park.
yeah, exactly.
Certainly not 2, but a 3-year. Any other comments, questions? Go to volunteer for the last comments. Going once, go twice. Twice, we'll work on the direction.
Thank you. We had asked more comments that right away. I don't know, getting on to the rest of our meeting. To start off, staff, wonderful job. Maybe the stamina you've had for 2 years. As you guys will recall, there was a hip component. There's a couple of other elements too. I think we kind of were letting design standards. So that was the final piece, which I understand would not aggressively pursue because it's hard to get consensus on design standards. There are things we can come up with, for example, else reader stories of the design standard. I also want to thank all of Gephardt, leadership about the economic development committee. Really have provided a definition of leadership to get us to this point. I spent about an hour going through this. You guys rely on me to do that. Some of these real estate things, so we're just giving 3 to 5 minutes and I will ramble. We'll talk about pools or anything. Sorry, it's real time. Yep. We talked about the multi-family, yeah, I highlighted a couple of sites for multi-family. Let's just leave that all out for now. I can tell you firsthand, I get calls from developers all the time wanting to do multi-family. So the second you say 3-story multi-family and here are the sites, they're all going to get offers, we're gonna have proposals. For sites. I'm not saying that's the wrong use, for some of those sites, but it does start to feel like spots when you put everything around it, it's commercial, on this in your apartment complex. So if we ever do go down the right route, probably maybe something like that town center, where you have some retail, certainly lots of amenities, connectivity, everything, whatever tells the developers when they call her. So why don't you guys focus on other things to wrap all this up, and not focus on multi-family for now? So, really, Alderman Chalago mentioned the community survey. A lot of these topics are, the community survey was actually designed around a number of these topics. And so don't put a fork in any of this until the community survey is out and analyzed and we get the chance to way back, because perhaps Alderman Meyer will change his position if he sees that, 90% of the people want multifamily. He decided for Washington Road comes. So that survey is very important. You are going to allow 3 stories anywhere. Well, I don't know if you are. Come back with it after tonight's feedback. But if you do, the concern is massing. Kind of heard that like small building next door, 3 stories, so it's like massing over that. Or you look at the banks and then or Mequon or Washington Road, to me, those will really mass over the road. It's not uncomfortable as well. So I did know though that it had 65 setbacks for most of the zoning districts, so that's okay. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's typical for setbacks.
but the important, some of those important, some sites in the corridor, like 0 setback, that's not anywhere, right?
No, I mean, the only ones that are closer, the ones that kind of had to be close, like the PNC Bank had to be close because we had to get the road connections to the site for across the board as possible, so they had to push it. Most of the other ones, you did allow a couple deviations to some of the retail, they have just one over parking in front of at least, or at least 60. So,
Here's an easy one. I think most of us do not want new car dealers as an additional use, anywhere in this corridor. So, pretty simple. Not sure how it got in there
well, it was already, we already had it in our codes.
all along.
Yeah, we've allowed, because the issue is gonna be for summer, so then if we keep that same zoning district, we have any vehicles in different area, there's the same zoning district.
Well, we're talking about for Washington Road, so nothing should be.
With our code, the zoning district, the same zoning district. Each where we here before, those were zoning districts. So
Maybe by change for that.
Right. So,
But yeah, again, that's not what I'm talking about. So maybe it's needed, this you don't need another. Yeah, that's fine. For it. So this is where my comments are going. I mean, we have really good intention, but there are some potential cancel marks we should get over there. So, that was supposed to be. All right. Data processing. So there's a bunch of conditional tolerating the uses. So what staff is trying to do, so it's very detrimental to a borrower if they not companies are under going to something happens. Might not get resolved. So it is the right thing to do to be very sensitive about this, but there are other tools perhaps talk about. But there are a few. Jack mentioned the cemetery on the west east side of the river. Sorry, yep. And that's not so much the issue, it's more like, we're making data centers, light industrial, and self-storage, that's either permitted use or conditional use, anywhere south of Mequon Road. In an effort to make those existing uses conforming, we're essentially should allow that as a conditional use anywhere. Or data center, like industrial and self-storage. So I just wanted to just kind of help educate the council on this topic a little bit, and maybe, I know Director Tolleson had some solutions, potential solutions. But I definitely don't think any of us, can speak on behalf of all of you, I don't think we want to double down on self-storage, data centers, like industrial, or anyone who's had a new development. So like a self-storage facility, they solved the problem for this. It was not a functionally obsolete building, it's a great building, did not need to come down. So we allowed self-storage there because it literally solved the problem for us. We weren't gonna allow any other industrial uses in there except the gym. So that should all, they just spent a massive amount of money on that building. So I don't think they should be non-conforming there. And if they are, we should have some special provision in our code for, it has been where buildings built after a certain date. They are not necessarily non-conforming, but we might just educate the council on that.
So there's a couple different things we could attack it. People want to be in a current situation where you allow expansion on uses, you know, say that anything is legal up until the date it's enacted and they remain legal, kind of grandfathered in a sense. It's another option. So we could deal with it. I just want to clarify the storage facility and industrial use. They're only allowed in the large scale, not allowed in B2 or B3. So they're only allowed in those large scale zoning districts.
But it could be on any properties on the east side, essentially of the whole corridor.
Anything in the map that's in the blue. Yeah.
So what I would like to do for those is kind of have an asterisk in the code where, essentially those uses, none of them are allowed south of Mequon Road. However, some of these where they're newer buildings, substantial value, we're not looking to buy there. So I think there's ways around this.
Yeah, I would think
Lots of more dialogue on it.
yeah, the data center one, you know, the same talk, we get them conforming as well, which is.
Yeah, and I'm saying I don't think they should be conforming. I think they should get it. That's when they're lender, they need to know that it's okay to be.
So we want to protect them.
Yeah. Yeah, if it burns down, we will let them rebuild the data center.
It's honestly.
We don't want to open Pandora's box for the rest of the corridor to become data centers, self-storage, just because we're trying to be consistent. So I think we can give these high value newer developments, the more buzzies, their lenders, because I know we have good ideas.
Yeah, we can talk about language and our best position, trying to make sure we're protected. But again, our goal is to try to, again, to play the razor's edge of trying to protect non-conforming uses or not create too many of them. So, but if that's the case, if you don't want to see those uses there, we could kind of put language in the code that would kind of grandfather the ones that are there and not allowed.
Well, if any of you disagree with kind of my thoughts, we'll be sure to let them know, so otherwise they'll probably. So, my final point, just to wrap up, I really appreciate you all listening. Reminding me about the bank subject. I also think that the banks are fine. I know no one wants them, but it's, their work always, you should say you can't pick winners and losers. So you can't say that like all the existing banks here are winners and no one else to come in. However, you did remind me of something we should consider, which is that when a bank goes dark, it becomes another use, which is that chiropractic building, the east side of Washington Road. They shouldn't be allowed to keep up these drive-through, apparatus in their structure. There's no reason why drive-through pantries should exist for businesses where use is different. So I think we should have something in our code for that.
Okay, it's good thoughts.
Thanks again, everyone. He was involved with all the hard work and timing. Thanks again.
Great feedback. I'll just add one thing, that you can certainly pause on the land use map adjustments and talk about potential residential uses, some of which might be necessary. Ultimately, I'm not sure it quite rises to the level of spot zoning as many of them are next to existing residential uses. So,
Yeah, there are a couple of.
there's a couple of ones that would look like that, and I agree to that extent, but many of them, the ones in the south end, the one next to the Apple Orchard, things like that, those are existing residential uses, so they, maybe it would count as just more analysis. And you're right, the survey will look back and a month or two now, with some data, none of this is big and light speed, so I think we incorporate that. How it can be incorporated the survey results, so that we probably should, since we paid a lot of money for the survey. Any other comments from anyone else? Other than the things generally talked about, we just have enough direction to forward.
So I guess I have the consensus on the screen, which you probably can't see up there, but I think we probably just need some feedback on this whole three-story issue with response support. Mentioned the three-story building on the side. I think the rest of the stuff, I think pretty much I think there's consensus on, other than 3 stories are right. Larger square footage of building and formation, I guess, maybe a strong pull on something that'll be.
Okay, we'll do it. So straw poll built on 3 stories as a vested rights east of Port Washington. Show of hands.
Yes.
Well, is there a suggestion on what uses you would like to do? I didn't see it, but we have 4. So there's the majority of hands, others. So. Well, the hotel study really doesn't have any bearing on that wasn't done to accompany the hotel, it was done because the desire for the recommendation of our consultant was more density somewhere, she actually wanted to do everywhere. Economic development talks specifically about limiting it to the east side only for all the reasons we just discussed. Not wanting to expanding, just allow it there to contain it. But I think it's
Kind of a wash, you know, it's 5 and 4, one way or the other, I can tell by the show of hands.
I think we have 4. It's 4. It's 4 and 1 not present, so there's an asterisk there, maybe.
Well, at least that's an easy one we can take out if we do it later, so that's a big impact a lot, but shit, I mean, okay, with the stories on this. Yeah, we're just talking about the commercial building here, so if we put the residential land use on hold for now, we're only talking very small thing. And I assume the rest of the conditions of that are just sit on here or give this again. Non-conforming, we'll look at some ways to try to mitigate our existing animal. Again, we'll continue to try to mitigate the impact of them and make it as few as possible to modify this only too much for the response.
I think it's the grand problem philosophy that suggested would be good. Oh, no. Well, other than you down the microphone, so you can tell. It's no one else in here.
Okay, so you, we'll just get into this.
So serious.
So you said that 3 stories as long as it's not residential. Referenced earlier, town center was multi-use downstairs. Those are the stories, detail, comment on that.
Well, it's relevant, you got me into the consistency there. And I guess I don't. Have the answer. All I can say is that as soon as you say that we will allow 3 stories, here are the sites. There is a very specified list of users. Sites, and you will see apartments. So just remember that the PUD is very effective. You don't have to allow them to have the 3-story just because they can still come back with a PUD. So we don't need to have this in there by right.
So just to clarify, so if you eliminate the land use section here, it would be residential, that would eliminate the ability to do mixed use anything, which still is talking straight commercial.
Yeah, if you pause it, the land use map. I guess the land use map isn't saying we'll do it, it's saying we'll list it.
Yeah.
So it's not rezoning, it's just not even you might be one to listen, so I don't think anyone would write it off, but based off that, they would come have a conversation. If they bought land out there, hopefully we would rezone it, it'd be a little bit risky. But at that point, notwithstanding, we can certainly put it on ice. Sure, the discussion forward. No harm in that.
Yeah.
We don't need to boil the ocean. Get most of the way there and keep on. Any last feedback? Was that productive enough?
Yeah, I think so. Did you want to see this again come back at a future time, or do we want to just start with the process of what the ordinance changes? Are you comfortable enough with the labels and everything? We have to create a shopping center district, which wouldn't be that difficult to do. It's just going to be allowing for permitted uses. Like, you know, for example, in pavilions, we have a lot of fast food restaurants. I don't know drive-throughs, I don't know coffee drive-throughs, but we've had conditions in the past for those, which you prove them all the time, the same conditions that we make them permitted. Only in a challenging condition. So it wouldn't be much to do, but it'd still be a little bit of work to create these ordinances. There's not a consensus that we're okay to move forward with these changes.
I get the general sense that as a whole, there's support. We may just cheat the nickel around the edges when it comes back, so I'm not sure it'd be a wholesale change.
But the last question I have is related to this issue of Summers. Also, do we want to look at creating, if we create zoning districts specific to Port Washington Road, we already have town center zoning, we have Creek zoning. There's very few commercial zoning districts other than maybe a handful of town center, Price that road. There's a couple pockets here. There's very few, so we have like a couple of zoning districts that maybe have 3 or 4 parcels in. Is that something we still want to see specific to Port Washington, or should we just look at try to accommodate those non-conforming uses as best we can?
I haven't tried to think about it too much.
Yeah, I just think with all the way we've done zoning ever since town center, we've kind of done a geographic area only. So this majority of the E2 through E4 is all commercial. It's very few other sites. So I prefer not to add to that another zoning district or just Port Washington Road. Still keep it E2 or for just a couple random spots across the city. So if that's okay, then we can take consideration forward with that. That makes sense.
I'm okay with you something district that I said, this one, I'm okay with our being shows. People that I understand. Do just. Yeah.
So if we address that issue, then.
All the new that. Now I just want to shrink my. You just call it a run and grab this one, or the language, before we get more banners.
It's back.
That. All right, any last feedback? So I'll take that at all on. That one, that's a. I wish I had 3. Okay, next discussion item, a Southern Fire and EMS Department annual update. Which we did it more last month, this month, actually 2 months ago. Chief is back and I give us an update on what's going on in some.
Thank you. Well, I bring this up. I was in the audience, 2 different people made reference to the building owners now. Like your skepticism in the ability of the fire department, however, sure we want it. Public safety is not in jeopardy. So like the mayor said, this is a little late. We're going to do our best. We also thought this is a little bigger, but I got 7 minutes. Briefly, for the last 10 years, our call line continues to go up for a lot of reasons, aging population, stuff being built in the cities. From 2015 to 2025, went from 1,900 to 3,500. So it's not quite double the calls, but the calls for service do continue to increase. The 68% of EMS calls are flat out, someone called 911 because you need a medical issue. 17% is going to Cedarburg to do paramedic intercepts. So basically, it's 85% EMS. So 85% is EMS, 15, or 85% is EMS, 15% is fire. And here's the reason you take a look at this is that This part right here, obviously, the aging population from 70 to 100, that's about 50% of the calls per year. And once you make it to 100, you're going to drive yourself to the hospital. Calls. What's important about this is remember that our fire department is heavily based on revenue, most of that is ambulance transport revenue. And anyone over 65 on Medicare, we only get about $300 back on the transport. It's not a lot, but it's what we have to deal with. So we try to deal with volume. So here are the facilities that use most of our services. You can see Newcastle is the biggest one up here. Lumia is the building that's just north of Station 2, which I'll come back and talk about in a minute. And Story Point, these two buildings here, which are just west of the firehouse on Muntrock, that makes it's a big impact on us too. And if you're curious, most people go to St. Mary's in Ozaki. It's been nice to have the Friedrich Hospital in Mequon for people to go to. Friedrich Hospital, the main one, where we take the trauma patients. Some people go to Falls, they live on the west side. Children have to go to Children's, so that's where we take everybody. Our response time, so everybody wants to know how are we doing. So there's a lot of data here, but I'm going to pull this out a little bit of the time so you can understand it. So first thing I want you to look at is right here, we have all calls. The red is the average response time to a call, and the blue is the 90th percentile to the call. And most fire departments are based 90th percentile now. Look at how you're doing. It's just a better judge of what's going on. I can explain that a little better. So we're at all calls, fire and EMS, 90% of the time, in less than 8 minutes and 57 seconds. Here's the anomaly. Take a look at this Mequon. This our average response time is 4 minutes and 24 seconds to an EMS call. Well, that's a great average response time. But that Lumia building next to Station 2 and the place right down the road here from the firehouse, as soon as someone dials 911 and the dispatcher receives the call, they push a button that says EMS, and every one of the fire department gets a page that says where the address is. It'll say 1900 North Washington Road. So the crews leave the station and get in the ambulance. They start driving over to Lumia, and while they're doing that, the dispatchers will ask, how old is the patient? What's the problem? For breathing, medical history. So they're actually taking the cot out of the ambulance, going to the door when it's paged out. So you get a zero minute response time. If you do that 300 times, it really kind of skews the data. So that's why you use the 90th percentile. If you take a look at Deansville fire calls, it's almost 13 minutes to get to a fire call in Deansville, yet Mequon is only 12 minutes to get to a fire call. Because Deansville is so small, the police are driving around all the time, it takes them 30 seconds to get any place. They'll go to a fire call, show up, oh, the fire's out, it's a false alarm. So we'll turn off the lights and siren and drive down an emergency, or sometimes a battalion, she can just go by herself. So that response time then is us driving non-emergent or taking our time to get there because there's nothing going on. So the numbers are kind of, you have to keep an eye on because it can skew the data, however you look at it. These two numbers though, the 90th percentile for EMS and 1215 for the 90th percentile for fire. People say, well, how does that compare to everyone else? And I'll just research quickly. There are two NFPA standards that address these response times, whether you're a career department or a volunteer department. If you're a career department, they tell you 80 seconds to put your fire gear on and start driving, and it's an EMS call, you have 60 seconds. So basically, they want you on scene 90% of the time at 5 minutes and 20 seconds to a fire, and 5 minutes to an EMS. So, and for Southern Ozaki, you can see a fire. Our fire is 12:15. The standard is 5:20. It's 5 minutes for EMS, and we're at 7:33. Again, that's a career department. That's what more short buildings themselves, fire city, Milwaukee, West Dallas, all those places that are heavy staffed and have lots of people. We're not quite there yet. Volunteer departments, there is no one standard other than saying you should have sufficient personnel to handle an EMS call and it should be well trained. And for a fire call, it says, again, you have to have enough resources to combat the problem, and you have to balance that with what the community expects for a decent response time. remember, we have 2 stations, 50 square miles, that's a lot, so if you, I don't know if anybody else, if you live down at Juniper or Saddle Road, about 4 part of the side, way out in the park, it should take you longer to get there. Fire, there may only be 3 people in the firehouse or 2 in the firehouse, you have to wait for somebody else to come in, it just takes that much longer for us to get out the door. And the thing we're most proud of is last year for 2024, trying to keep, 7 people on a schedule, 24/7. We only had 567 hours that we got covered. And most of that was somebody had to get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, somebody had to leave at 6, you know, some of the payment volumes. And that, if you've been with us for the last, way back before COVID, Mequon was hovering around 20% uncovered, and Teachel was hovering around 30% uncovered. So, cover schedule really well last year. Any questions?
Any questions? And great summary around, we just back up almost on time, we have a couple other items unfortunately, but, it's for doing the part. Any questions? Alderman Strelcher.
Send out.
I'm not sure it's possible, but
Yeah, that would take a little more,
well, let's put it on the to-do list, maybe in the next year or not. Not want to get in the way of other things, but I know where you're going with that, it's weird, you know, the years, you know, Mr. 41% on the end, it's more challenged. I remember this from the past, Craig, if I'm wrong, Chief, we wanted to approach those 5-minute numbers, we need, I think, 5 firewalls in the city.
I think the state is also, it's like 7.
7, okay. Then you have to staff them as well, so you can imagine how the cost of all that would explode for maybe 2 minutes on average. 2 minutes on the 90th percentile. So it's a huge leap in infrastructure and personnel cost to get there. All things considered, a good amount of law.
The best thing to do is check your slope detectors and have a plan for your family if there's an emergency.
As we've been reminded, in the emergency plan, it was good to have a couple of days ago, we were reminded. So thank you, Chief. We'll move on. Next, we have a resolution that the standing committee, so we'll talk about it. Or resolution 42-227, resolution ratifying the proclamation declaring state of emergency in response to the natural disaster resulting in historic rainfall this past weekend. So yesterday evening, I declared that officially declared that there's a emergency in the city that's been forwarded on to the county and the state, which we are in processes to make us eligible for assistance should be required and/or reimbursement of costs related to recovery of its personal costs, reconstruction costs and infrastructure houses. Kind of procedure will make sure that we qualify to get as much as we can state and federal benefits. So, although it's a lot, the desires to include the events of today. We'd have to reissue it, re-sign it, and repost it.
You could amend the resolution. Wow. The resolution.
But we could amend it on the fly, and ratify it by council. My niche is only good until the next council meeting. Thankfully, I had to wait the whole day. So it wasn't a lot of time to wait, but when the time comes, this is not upon us at council as well, correct? So we can have that discussion here with the formal meeting. Yes, but a bunch of trees blew down today. It should be lost on anyone that it probably toppled over because the soil was being violently watered. It's gonna dump on us on the weekend. It was 7 to 9, 7 to 11 inches, depending on where you're sitting. It's tremendous amount of water. I can tell that it's somewhere around 7.5 billion units. city, including the teams. A lot of water. Okay, that's a great comment. It does automatically expire after 30 days unless I or this, well, I choose to extend this by then rather than it's. When timing works, that takes us till just ahead of the next council meeting, so any years that they want to set for discussion. Any other comments or feedback? All right, we'll get back to it in council. And then our last item here is description for. Oh, recommendation. Okay. Motion. A second, all in favor of recommending to the council? Any opposed? Thank you for that. Point of clarification. Now, the potential additional discussion on the iPause emergency alert system. She will give us a really update on what that is.
It'll be quick. So, first, let's talk about focus sectors, we're more. Turn around, right? That's. On So what I have for you guys today is a little update. You guys probably wonder, we have a lot of disasters in recent months all over the country. And you probably have a plan, but do we have a plan? Like if there's an emergency, what are we doing to alert the people? So we do have iPods, which is an integrated public alert warning system. So it's tower based. So cell phone towers, Ozaki County is in charge of it. We've had it since 2015, and it shows weather alerts, police shelter and place notices, hazardous event, passing public safety. So we do have that in place for an emergency. So, for instance, if something went down the river, we needed to get everybody shelter in place or have them evacuate. We would call up Osage County and they would peg off the towers. The towers would alert your cell phones. The only limitation to this here is that possibility wherever your address is in for the cell phone coverage might get alerted. So if your kids are, in Alabama or something like that, and it's not a clear message, which we have had in the past, they get alerted to shelter in place or to evacuate, and they don't need to. So that's the only caveat to this. But if they're clear in the message, which we have figured out, there shouldn't be a problem. So we do have a system in place for the alert system, and it's also based. Any questions? Okay. Any questions? Second. Opposed? They're adjourned from the full meeting, we will